Welcome to the State of the Markets podcast. I'm Paul Rodriguez of ThinkTrading.com.
I'm Tim Price of Price Value Partners.
And our very special guest is Shane McEvoy. Shane McEvoy, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Well,
welcome back, 'tis not, Paul.
Yes, welcome back. Thank you for correcting me. Perhaps you could just tell us a bit about what you do and your history.
Well, I run a financial company, a financial marketing company, I suppose you'd call it. We save, using AI practices, we save on average 5 hours per week per employee in most firms, and that can generate on average about £180,000 in bottom line that they haven't had to go and find somewhere else. Plus, we do we sort of do specialist lead generation marketing and outreach to find LPs for people, funds and clients for people, that type of stuff.
What's an LP?
Limited partners.
Okay.
And we work for people who do distressed European debt. We work for people who design software specifically to manage portfolio and risk management as well, and something else. And people who have just launched a collateralized loan obligation ETF, which I thought was a bit of a funny one in this marketplace. So we've got all sorts of clients, but mainly in the financial industry.
Yeah. So tell us about your history and how you got to this point, because it's unless you don't want to go down that road and you want to just stick to this financial stuff, Shane.
Well, I started work at Yellow Pages when I was a young man, and it was an excellent place to work. The clients or the customers got what they paid for and then some. But over time, obviously, the internet came along, and because we had a monopoly, you couldn't really count, let's say, Thompson's, which was the other directory in a marketplace. Because we had a monopoly, clients loved to hate us. We kind of put the prices up every year, how much we wanted. We never gave a discount no matter how much you bought, that type of stuff. So clients really were looking for an excuse to find a stick to beat us with, and Google was that stick.
Have you seen the film? I forget what it's called, but we've reviewed it or picked it as a media pick in previous episodes, and it's about research and motion.
Oh,
yes,
BlackBerry. Yeah.
Because I forget what the film's called, but there's a pivotal moment where they're rolling out the latest iteration of the, what is it called?
BlackBerry.
The BlackBerry. And in the meantime, Apple is just launching the iPhone.
Yeah.
And there's such a sense of sort of denial that, well, we can add little tricks that make it go, the keys go click. And it's like big deal.
I do remember
way to miss the point by a country mile.
I do remember some tech entrepreneurs that I knew well bemoaning the fact that I didn't have a keyboard and couldn't type as fast at the time with the iPhone. But it did take over because of lots of other things, and now you don't have to type anymore. You can just talk to it, can't you? So,
well, there was that whole
pretty
thing.
soon you won't even need to type or talk. You'll just have your thoughts transferred effortlessly by neuro programming.
Probably.
There was a big problem with the iPhone when it first was in development. When it was in development, very, very close to it being launched with the actual keyboard, because the problem with it was that you would hit the wrong key, and there was some very clever designer who at the last minute managed to work out a way that when you go to hit a key, it sort of finds the right one. It sort of knew which, by some intelligent design. Because I had a BlackBerry, absolutely loved it, absolutely love the keyboard, still do, really. I really don't like these other types of keyboards. But you
need to have fingers like ET to make the keyboard work. Long spindly things rather than
I don't know,
human-sized hands.
I don't know. It's just
maybe you've got more slender fingers than I have, Paul.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I've never really thought about that. But it's just the tactile feeling of a keyboard and being able to position your fingers in the right place, because of course you've got that little extra bump in the middle, so you know where you are. But so if you were in a car and it was a bumpy journey, you'd find it very difficult to type on an iPhone, but on a BlackBerry it was really easy. To
go back to the point, Shane's point about efficiency and productivity, I can sort of get that with some reservations to do with the accuracy of AI, but the thing that leaps out to me is that for all of the efficiency benefits, you're probably getting rid of staff. So the net, I mean, obviously in relation to what that impact is on the employee, that's a bad one. in relation to the economy as a whole? What happens if all you're effectively doing is using AI spend to dispense with labor? Doesn't that effectively mean that the benefits go to capital, but they don't go to the employees, they don't go to the workforce, which is problematic given the let's say the unlevel playing field between capital and labor already?
Well, we're back to that that
It
long.
sounds a bit like Ludditism. I can see.
Well, no, but we're back to that ongoing conversation about where is the productivity gain in normal people's back pocket. You know, we've had years of technology advances that don't seem to have done much because, you know, perhaps inflation is a lot higher than they're actually letting on in any of the figures, because
The figures are massively distorted.
Yeah, surely if we've suddenly got all computers that mean people can work from home and all these other productivity gains, notwithstanding AI for a minute, surely everybody should be better off, and it hasn't happened. So you could arguably right. But on the flip side of that argument, I see people, speak to people and peers in our industry all the time, kids who've dropped out of college, you know, within 6 months have learned a bit about AI and are running companies that are turning over 30,000-40,000 pounds a month, you know, so from a standing start, and they're thinking, why did I bother going to college in the first place? You know?
Well, that's Tony Blair's fault.
Well, actually, that goes back to what we talked about in the last pod again, and have mentioned many times about the education system is just so woefully behind the technology.
It's completely unfit for purpose.
I mean, it's just so behind the technology. It really is. It's just incredible. And like you say, it's like, what's the value in going to university, spending all that money, ending up with a load of debt when you could actually just leave and start a business? And I don't know.
I mean, when we, because I'm showing my age here a little, but when we were kids, the first pocket calculator came along, and of course, all the teachers said you won't be able to remember your times tables, and they were right. But it's made no difference to my life. So you can't put the genie back in a bottle. Kids are all using AI in some way to cheat at their homework or to help with their homework, depending which way you look at it. So AI has you know, in a lot of firms has replaced what could be a sort of mid-range graduate every single time. You know, think of a solicitors. You know, the main partner needs to sign off on the contract, but what is a contract? An agreement between two people over some property or some business, and it's generally repeatable apart from the names and the amounts of money.
Yeah, it's boilerplate.
It's nearly boilerplate. I mean, obviously there's clauses and stuff. In the old days, that would probably be prepared by a paralegal or some legal, you know, secretary or something like that, and then the main partner would sign it off because his name is above the door. These days, the paralegals are all going to be gone very soon because you don't need them once you set up AI properly, and we're doing that for legal practices now.
Do you know a guy called Jeffrey Tucker or the organization Brownstone Institute?
Yeah.
There's a text that's addressing the qualitative aspect of AI, which is from it's a current tweet. Oddly, AI is becoming ever more like the mainstream media. If you know nothing, it is essential. If you know just a bit, it can give a boost. If you actually know the subject well, it is unbearably stupid and replete with errors.
Oh, that's brilliant. Who said that? Was that yours? Did you say?
No, that's Jeffrey Tucker. That's Jeffrey Tucker at Brownstone.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's a brilliant analysis of where we are.
I think the main thing I mean,
it's obviously still relatively early days in the evolution of this new technology, so
yeah,
it's going to be buggy. But you know, it'll always be buggy to a certain extent because nothing's perfect.
Well, I think it's like a lot of things, you know, when it comes to sound money, that has caught on a bit more over time because, you know, 50 years of fiat has made people begin to realize that something's going wrong. And we're right at the beginning of AI. So most people are just using it to answer questions or write this for me. And they put in fairly what one would say basic prompts or instructions into the thing. But if you get it to prompt itself, which I'll explain in a second, you get much more out of it. If you say, can you help me with my legal problem? It'll go, okay, then, and it'll give you sort of wide ranging, vanilla generic advice. If you say you're the best contracts lawyer in the UK and you know everything about contracts law, and I need you to solve this problem on a repetitive basis for me or my client, suddenly it knows much more. Even though you've actually told it to think about less things, you've corralled it into a knowledge base, which means it actually works a lot better.
So there are ways of massaging better outcomes out of it.
Kind of, you've got to tell it what it is, because otherwise it's the whole world in its head. So you say you're the most expert person on a Mercedes Jeep, and I don't know what this part is. Not something I've done, but I can imagine people doing this. Can you tell me what's the general on average, how often does this particular thing go wrong? Because I've got this problem, I can't tell if it's this thing or this thing that needs replacing. And that would get you much further down the road. So that sort of contradicts what Jeffrey has said in his, if you know something, if you know enough, it's terrible. Because what it can do is it can augment your knowledge if you give it the right input in the first place. So some prompts can be, some instructions, or what we're going to call a prompt from now on, can be a page long. And what you do, so I don't know how to do this. So you say, okay, you get it to write the prompt for itself. So you tell it it's really good at writing instructions for AIs, and you need it to write an instruction about X problem. It then writes the instruction, and then you open up a new incidence of it, and you use that instruction to solve the problem.
And Shane, maybe you could tell us a bit about the things that are it's really good at, and it just nails almost every time.
Well, I think the thing we have to consider is which AI you're using for which task. So
right.
We use ChatGPT, Claude, something called Manus, occasionally DeepSeek, although Chinese problems with that, Llama and Quen, which we've used once or twice. But, we use Claude a lot for writing and editing. We use Manus a lot for research.
Sorry, writing and editing what?
Content. So we'll say, I really want to put together a piece of content that talks about the price of gold in hot dogs in 1901 compared to the price of gold, or how many hot dogs you get for the same amount of gold in 2025. And it will go and do the research, or this is the thing, I'll use one AI to do the research and give me an outline of the post, then I'll use another AI to write that post, and then I'll use a third AI, possibly the same AI but a third instance of it, to edit that post.
And how do you know it's right?
I suppose the question, you have to do things like you ask one to fact check the other one.
Yeah, but still, how do you know it's right?
Well, that's the thing you've got to take into account. So what I would do, for instance, we use Perplexity, which is a paid platform of Perplexity, is a really good research tool because it will research everything properly compared to the other ones. It'll form a brief which you can then pass on to a writing tool, let's say Claude in this instance. And then you can use another instance of Claude that you've given instructions about being a really good editor for the FT, let's say, to edit that down into something that's a LinkedIn post or be a long blog post or something like that. And you will have found, because we do obviously spot check these things, if you set up the prompts right and you've chained these together properly, and this isn't cutting and pasting from one to the other, there's a way of doing this, which I'll get onto later. You'll find that it actually has found up-to-date data and it is right. And if you ask it to provide you the links in the article, you can click and check the data that it has used very easily.
Paul, do you remember the name of that software platform that we discussed briefly a few months ago that enables you to basically outsource the writing of code to that platform?
Yeah, Replit, yeah.
Oh, Replit. A lovable Replit, we use all of those.
Because I hadn't come across it, and I only came across it through a piece in the FT, but that struck me as extraordinarily potentially useful and / dangerous, because it's like, I think it was even someone as impressive technically as Elon Musk was asked a while ago, what advice would he give, say, children or teenagers growing up? And he said, learn to code. But if that rug's now been pulled, what's safe for anybody?
Well, I disagree that it's being pulled, because, and I'll give you a real world.
You'd say it's being augmented.
Yeah. It suffers from the same problem. And I have a friend of mine who's a super smart professional coder and has been working on a project. He was working on this project for months and using an AI tool. I'm not going to mention it just in case it's like, whatever. But anyway, he was using an AI tool to help him with the coding with some difficult stuff. And I was meeting him regularly. And he was talking about how brilliant it was and how it was pumping out all this code and it was doing stuff in days that it would take him months. And then he asked
he had to go back and debug loads of it. Yeah.
No, he had to go back and debug it. He asked it to debug it. It debugged itself. It lied about its debugging.
I heard that. Yeah.
And then all of the code was nonsense, and he had to chuck it all out. And this happened twice, not once.
It went on a bender and came back with a massive hangover.
Yeah, I mean, it literally started complaining about having to check the code. It's just phenomenal, really, and it was just funny. So again, it falls into this category of it can help you up to a point, but you have to really know what you're doing to make sure that what it's doing is right.
kind of depends which one, because a little while ago,
Is Grok something you've used?
I don't use Grok, to be fair. I just haven't. I've got
Which is
so many.
Twitter's or X's embedded.
I already pay so much for all the other ones because I have quite professional plans on all of them. That adding another one didn't seem important because I haven't seen the benefits that Grok has over any of these other ones we use, on top of all the image and video generators we use. But I would argue, I was talking to Dominic Frisby maybe a couple of months ago. He was talking about Bitcoin treasury companies and which ones were the potential to do it based on, I can't remember the metric that he came up with. There was some new metric that was a bit like stock to flow or a bit like PE for Bitcoin treasury companies that were holding Bitcoin instead and borrowing against it. And I set the task up in Manus, which is a fairly niche, I suppose, but well thinking and researches the whole internet very cleverly, I think, better than GPT. I set a task up for that to come up with other potential Bitcoin treasury companies like Semler Scientific and other ones. And it pumped out within about an hour a fantastic report about all of them. I went off and did some other work. And when I came back, it had made a website for them so I could click from one to the other and decide based on the metrics that they come up with. Now, to be fair, I didn't spend time reading it all. And it could have been absolute dog shit in there. I don't know. But it did seem fairly accurate based on what Dominic had said about Semler Scientific, one of his particular firms. And it came up with more or less the same metrics he did. I read it to compare to what he'd written, and we talked about it, but I didn't take it any further. But the fact that it could come up with what I would call fundamental analysis on a space in the financial industry fairly quickly was quite interesting. Now, if you told it was the best technical analysis and an analyst in the world, and it knew all the books from, I don't know, what's his name, Stackenbecker or something, all those old TA books, and you knew all that stuff, and you told it then, and you gave it screenshots of charts, and you told it to analyze them. I don't know how good that would be, but surely there are high frequency trading operations that do the equivalent of that in some way with AI.
Did you ever come across the book or the topic, the Clue Train Manifesto?
Yes. I can't remember anymore. We did talk about it before.
Yeah, because for anyone that doesn't know, I came across Clue Train, which I think this website's still extant at ClueTrain, CLUETRAIN.com. And I think it was put up in the late 90s. And I think the people behind it were basically sort of hippie dropouts from somewhere like MIT or whatever. But the point being is, effectively, it's a modern day reworking of Luther's 95 Theses, the stuff that was allegedly nailed to the door of Wittenberg Church to cause the Reformation, trigger the Reformation. And the central argument, I think, is being increasingly validated by, say, what's happening in AI. Because for anyone that is not familiar with it, I came across it through a research note by Henry Blodgett when I was at Merrill Lynch back in the late 90s. And the essential argument is, I think its very first argument was all markets are conversations. And then its second point was the internet, which was still relatively new at the time, was facilitating conversations that simply weren't possible in a pre-internet age. And now I'd say that one of the conclusions they came to or suggested was that it was going to completely transform business as usual. And we've already discussed just in the last half hour how it basically makes the concept of, let's say, a kid setting up a business and fairly quickly achieving like a global scale. And now supercharged by AI, now it seems that it has the technology has the potential to completely destroy the workforce of large corporations, because a lot of those jobs simply aren't required anymore. To repeat a point either you or Shane made earlier, I remember being on Primrose Hill probably about a year ago now, maybe a little bit longer, and there was a guy, and he was a lawyer, and he was saying that within a few years there would be no basically entry level, or there'd be no junior legal positions whatsoever, because they'd all be replaced by AI. So I'd say there's this entry level stuff, it will just simply stop existing. And now I wonder, because so many jobs are basically managerial and largely valueless, whether it'll also eliminate middle management as well.
If you sort of relate that to sort of go back a bit, lawyers push a lot of paper around, and in the old days they used to have a typing pool, and they would handwrite stuff and then someone would type it. Then dictaphones came along, and girls who could, or sorry, sexist, people who could sit there with headphones in and type really fast while listening to a dictaphone that played the speech a bit faster.
Yeah.
Came along, and that improved productivity. And then I'd say a fair while ago, solicitors got some sort of voice type system, so an awful lot of that typing type work disappeared, or they did it themselves. And now I suspect no one has someone typing for them anymore, because you can just dictate to a machine, and that's been around for a while. So what's the last job of someone who is a junior legal person is checking stuff and researching stuff, and that is exactly what, if you set up AI properly, it does. So, but then again, the high street has been decimated by AI, not because it's in an obvious way, because Amazon warehouses haven't replaced all those, has replaced lots of the high street, but an awful lot of the employees in an Amazon warehouse are robots,
So what jobs do we think will be taken by AI, and what are the ones that are most at risk, and what are safe if we can try and work it out between us? I would start.
I don't think anything's safe now.
Plumbing and heating engineer.
Yeah, I would say
conditioning guys.
yes.
Climbing up ladders and making ducting and bending pipes.
100%.
It's going to be a very long time before we get a domestic robot that can go into people's houses.
Priest.
Priest, yeah. Well, I suppose you could have an AI priest. I think the
prostitute.
AI analyst already. So you might as well have AI priest.
Well, you could have robots.
No, I'm not that I know of such things, but I'm still saying that people will respond to the common touch.
Yes,
human touch.
Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. I suppose
THX. Do you know the film THX 1138? George Lucas's, I think, first film.
I've heard of it. Yes,
they have robot priests in that.
Okay,
how visionary is that?
So what are taxi drivers? Definitely, that's got to be gone.
They've already got Waymo all over the States. Although somebody apparently got trapped in a Tesla yesterday, I think a Cybertruck. And I've heard this before. One of our previous clients who worked in motorsport told me that he'd seen video of I can't say who they are, but government employees in America trapped in a Tesla and they couldn't get out and just burned, and that happened yesterday. So
shit,
I wouldn't be keen on jumping in a Waymo myself. I have to say I'd prefer a human taxi driver, but maybe I'm a Luddite on that front.
Well, things still are being worked out, aren't they? So so it's bound to happen, but that's also to do with the lithium-ion battery technology, which needs to be improved, which is a kind of another issue. But in terms of
I'd say all sorts of authorial things that previously were deemed to be bulletproof. And I'll give you a trivial example, one that relates to me at a personal level. So I remember the very first time when things like operations like Bloomberg were using basically machines to generate news articles, and they weren't terribly exciting. You wouldn't necessarily go out of your way to read them because they were very, very dull. And then more recently, I gave Grok the chance. Long-standing clients will know that for whimsical reasons, every Christmas I normally put out one or two sort of satirical carols that have a sort of vague market theme. And I asked Grok to do this exercise a few months ago, and the quality of what it could put out, which is basically a sort of a satirical, the lyrics of a Christmas carol adjusted to give it more of a market flavor. It was basically as good as anything I was capable of doing. So there is the quality has suddenly gone way up in all forms of content, as far as I can tell. And that means that journalists and writers should now be looking over their shoulder.
I mean, just remember Google 1994 or whenever it came along, Internet 1994, and compared to what we've got now. I mean, it was completely different. No one could, the Economist and papers are putting out articles. No one will ever book their own plane, ticket. They'll need a travel agent. No, there was a time where it was considered a challenge to lock 3 people in a shop window with a credit card and the internet and see how long they could survive. The jeopardy was, would they be able to survive a week with a credit card and an internet connection and a laptop? And of course, no one would think that was a problem now. So we're literally in 1994 when it comes to AI and what it can do, and it's changing so fast, and what it can do is changing so quickly. Google Nano Banana's latest update, which is just their version of image editing, has killed anybody who's got a job working on Photoshop. It's killed it. You can just tell it, no, I don't want that writing that way, and I want it behind the person, and I want them to have a green jacket instead of a red jacket. And can you give them a Burberry bag? And it
Does it give them the right number of fingers?
It does it completely. It's completely. This isn't video. This is more image. But
Right.
if you are working for, I don't know, an advertising agency placing products in something like Vogue with good-looking models, the models have all gone. You don't need them anymore. That's already been achieved. There's already AI models in these magazines.
Yeah.
And if
And what are those? Are those
there's a
basically
new film-
composites of hundreds of separate images?
I don't think so. I don't know how it makes them. It's a mathematical thing. But, the art director will say, actually, can she have a slightly different color collar because it doesn't go with the bag we've given her? And the bag
Thinner
isn't actually
eyebrows or
a product,
whatever.
right? The bag is, they've given it a picture of the bag from the factory and it's superimposed it, or superimposed is the wrong word, it's added it to her and she looks completely realistic. And he's gone, can we have a different color car behind there? And can she be in Paris now? And it does it instantly, So the jobs, I wouldn't say models' jobs have gone particularly, but there's some danger there. And anybody who used to sit in an agency fixing things like that and changing artwork, they're in jeopardy. Anybody lower tier marketing, they're in jeopardy because we used to use a lot of writers. We still use financial writers from, publications like Money Week and stuff like that. But we do get a lot of it written first and ask them to check it. And we aren't getting much pushback anymore. It is, if you set it up right, if you set up, like we recently set up a system where if you give us your LinkedIn profile in your website and a subject matter and say, it'll write you a very good LinkedIn post on that subject matter in your voice because it looks at your LinkedIn. This is a free thing we made. It looks at your LinkedIn, it looks at your website, it figures out what you're about, and it puts together. And if you say like a post about gold versus Bitcoin, let's say, it will write that post, find the hashtags, give you advice on the right image to put in it based on 2 or 3 words you give it. And we just made that for fun to see what it would produce. And everybody we've sent it to so far, and it's a free thing, it's not we're not charging for it. Everybody we've sent it to so far has said it's really accurate and they can't believe. The one complaint we had was they were annoyed that it didn't appear instantaneously like it did on ChatGPT. We have to email it to them because it's built this. We have sort of 4 AIs in a chain, and then at the end it emails them and sends them a text message to say it's ready and stuff like that. But it writes a really good LinkedIn post, and there's no secret. We can do this for a 3,000 word blog post, and it's pretty accurate too. If you give us your LinkedIn profile, perhaps a few words about who you are, your website, the AI the way we've built it will scrape your website, look at everybody on the website, look at your profile, look at perhaps the fact you're in Tim's case, a value investor rather than a momentum investor or a trend follower. It will write the article in a voice around that and give it a slant. It will write a whole blog post around that. It will send it to you, and you can then decide whether you want to use it and whether you like it or not. It is uncannily good if you know how to set it up. Now, of course, there are still mistakes, and people will often. I tried ChatGPT and it came up with really shit answers. Generally, because I haven't told it what to do properly, and that's a skill in itself. People charge money to help you write prompts to get the best or the most out of AI. That is an actual sort of freelance job, a prompt engineer, because people don't know how to use them. It's a bit like, I know how to drive a car, but can I drive a car really fast around a bend a la Damon Hill? Can I? I can't. But so how do I get to that? How do I get to the point where I'm using AI like Damon Hill instead of me in my car? That's kind of, and there's a way of doing that, or you can train yourself up on that, and it doesn't take long.
To tie this back into a markets perspective, there was a very interesting piece by a guy called Ruchir Sharma in the FT earlier this week, and there's 2 stats I'm just going to wheel out. One of them is that the amount of money invested in AI accounted for 40% of US GDP growth this year, and the even more striking one is that AI companies accounted for 80% of the gains in US stocks this year.
Yeah, I mean,
it's extraordinary concentration.
Harris Kupperman, or Cuppy as he's known, put out a second article about AI feeding itself, the dragon eating its own tail. And he posited that, just spend on data centers could be reflective of about 6% of USA's GDP. And when they do stop, and we've looked into this, I know a lot about data centers because we've had quite a few clients, some very big clients in the past in that space. And the margins are very slim. But if NVIDIA are investing in OpenAI and then OpenAI are in some way buying NVIDIA chips, that does sound like there's a bit of some sort of circular Ponzi scheme going on, and that is what's happening. I mean, that kind of what happened in the past with, I think, Oracle in the 2000s in the .com boom.
But it feels very reminiscent of the very first .com boom that ended in effectively March 2000, because everyone's building an internet infrastructure, and then everyone realizes that the business case isn't quite there yet, and then the whole thing collapses.
Well, I can't remember the figures, but it was something like there's a 60 or maybe it's a 30 billion a month run rate on AIs. I'm building them, and they're not making that money back. They're never going to make the money back.
But where's the money coming from? Where is the revenue being generated?
Well, we spend a fair amount on AI, and we spend a fair amount on what we call API calls, where other software is talking to our AI and using its processing power to answer a question or do a task. And we've talked a little bit how you chain AIs together to do a task. For instance, our post writer we just talked about, and that costs money, but it's really cheap. And at some point, maybe they'll put the price of API calls up, which is a way of calling the AI to answer a question or do a task, and then they charge you a penny here and a penny there. And maybe they'll put the price up. And some use cases where you use the higher level of ChatGPT, let's say, are more expensive. But they're not making very much from that. And so the argument is they could do it because everybody is using it. And once I don't know what you think, but once you've used ChatGPT and it works pretty well for the things you answer, do you go back to Google? And if they suddenly said, look, it's £10 a month, would you say no? I don't know. You might say yes, People, something like 20% of searches for "I'd like a plumber around the corner" are done on ChatGPT now, because people just can't be bothered to change back to Google, and it does this. And then you can say, "Well, I'd like a plumber around the corner that specializes in this particular brand of boiler and has got good reviews on Trustpilot." And what that would do, instead of you going to Google and finding Trust Trader and Check a Trade and all these sort of trade sites, and then going to Trustpilot and going to Google reviews and looking at that, it does all that work for you. So sort of Google is quite under threat because of that, which is why it's obviously fighting back with AI answers at the top of the search and its own Gemini Google search. But most people kind of got into ChatGPT first mover advantage and all that type of stuff. I don't know that many people use Claude, although it's very big and it's excellent at writing. And I know hardly anybody that uses Manus that isn't in our space. Most people are just ChatGPT, first mover advantage. And when they realize, actually, if you're looking for a good restaurant, it will read all reviews for you and put 3 at the top of your list so you don't have to do that, then you're not ever going to go back to Google for those sorts of things either,
Yeah,
I'll give you an anecdotal example, which again just shows that it isn't perfect. So I was looking for a venue for a birthday party. It's a birthday lunch earlier this year, and I went, and this is Grok, and I went to Grok and said, "Can you tell me basically pubs in the Holborn area that have basically a separate dining room or a private room?" And it gave me a variety of answers. One of which I then went down to the pub, and they didn't have a first floor dining room, and Grok said they did. It was a barefaced lie.
Swine. I mean, I can't comment on Grok because I don't use it. But then you've got ChatGPT free version, then you've got ChatGPT Pro, and then you've got ChatGPT. I can't remember the top level what the name is, and they do think differently. They give you better answers. If you pay the 20 quid a month version, I think it is, it gives you much better answers than the free version. It thinks longer. It comes up. It's much more accurate in the end. And perhaps most people are just using the free version and get frustrated when I'm not talking about Grok in particular. I'm talking about ChatGPT. Get frustrated when it comes up with rubbish, But if you've got a version that is regularly and all the time using ChatGPT version 5 and deep thinking, it does come up with good answers. But people forget to press those little icons at the bottom where you can say, "I'd like you to search the internet and answer this question," or "I'd like you to do deep research and answer this question." And in some paid for versions or free versions, you don't get those options. Those little options aren't at the bottom of your screen, and they all kind of do this. You can ask some of them to take over your computer. Claude will take over your browser now in a much better way than ChatGPT's Pro version does. It's only been rolled out to a few people, but it is astoundingly good.
How does, to circle back to something we were talking about earlier, how does the world of academia possibly catch up with this?
So if you're talking
with difficulty,
about
I think has to be the
cheating
conclusion.
at their theses, there are AI checkers that they use, but that's an arms race.
So people are using AI to do their essays, and then
for sure.
teachers are using AI to check that they're not using AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's AI markers.
Sorry.
there's AI markers within the AI that can tell you it's there. You know, the copy and paste. There's certain characters that
And
they
there's places where you can drop it in that strip them out as
well,
well.
it's exactly what I was just about to say. But there's ways of taking that out as well. But I just wonder if there is some form of fingerprint in there that you can't take out in the same way that we didn't know about printers having a certain coding that made it so that you could identify every single printer that's ever been used because of this invisible coding, but just to stop people effectively printing their own money, you know, and so what we don't.
One of the things you can tell, one of the easy things you can tell if someone's using AI to email you, is ChatGPT particularly inserts extra long hyphens that you would never use.
Yeah.
It puts hyphens perhaps where you would put a comma, and the hyphens are actually quite long. They're not like a usual hyphen from your keyboard.
Yeah.
So when I'm using ChatGPT, which I do a lot for my emails, I will delete them and put a normal hyphen in there, or commas, or 3 dots, because it kind of puts them where you'd put 3 dots or a comma. I don't know why. That's just how it is. No matter how many times you tell it not to do it, it still does it. And that's a clear giveaway that someone's using AI to write to you. Often they just think, can you write me the answer to this email? And it does, you know, because I can't be bothered to think about that. So humans are always looking for the easiest route when it comes to cognition, aren't they? To processing power. They think, just answer that for me so I can sit here and eat some more quavers or whatever. You know, that's kind of how they are.
Yeah, I shared a YouTube video on X about that. There's a guy that did a really interesting analysis of that, showing that extended colon basically to show, or dash, I should say, to explain it. And also what it said was, you can tell because it has a certain pattern in the way it answers things. And it also never talks about itself. So if somebody will write, I went to this place on holiday and I did this and this was my experience, whereas it doesn't speak like that. It speaks more generally. And so there's certain signs that you could, once you see them, you can pick up on them. But what I find actually very interesting is that because so much content now is being created by AI, the AI is going to start to eat itself, because all the content's going to be AI, then the AI is going to train on its own AI, and then there's going to be this situation where, and it may take a very long time, where actually you got to go back to human input because you need to differentiate it somehow. And how do you differentiate it if AI is learning on AI? And it becomes the term, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the term AI slop is being used more and more. And AI
work slop is a new term as well, where people are pretending to do work that AI has done for them and claiming it as their own, and it's shit. You know?
Yeah, but you know,
AI work slop is a new term as well.
The whole image, you know, when you get those thumbnail images that are AI, and you go, okay, that's AI, you can just tell, and it's like, it just gets a bit like.
So what I would say to sort of counter that is, a lot of people are just using the plain version or a paid for version of the normal ChatGPT interface, where you paste something in and it gives you an answer. Not many people have set it up, have built their own GPTs or their own projects within these things, where you can build a repetitive thinking engine that does specifically for a task. Let's say, write me 10 tweets every week about this thing, or make an image for that thing. Most people haven't done that. So if you give it a big knowledge base, like, for argument, one thing you could do is you could upload 40, 50 PDFs of your original writing, screenshots of your website, links to other things you like, all that type of stuff in a repeatable project inside GPT or Claude, which we use a lot. It now knows to think exactly this way. It has all this data that's about this particular thing, and it will give you much better. I'm not saying perfect. It'll give you much better answers than if you just put the normal question into the AI as it stands. If you tell it you are now this thing, and you give it, you can, in some cases, you can give it whole books. So I would take, as a bit of a cheat, I would take David Ogilvy's classic marketing book, Ogilvy on Advertising. I'd find a PDF copy of that, and I'd put that into it, because I like that style of marketing. I like that style of headline and tagline. I like old-fashioned marketing, because all marketing now looks kind of the same. And I think if you put something together that looks like an old newspaper article, it might stand out. I could be wrong, but it now, anytime I say, can I have, I've written this article, I'd like some posts about it, can you write them in this style? It knows, because it's got that whole book inside its head. Now, of course, You could argue it knows that book exists somewhere, but I haven't given it to it. I've given it a PDF of the book, and I've said I really like smart, clever headlines, and like images like this, and I like subheadlines like that. This is the way I want it written. It always produces much better stuff because I've given it a sort of criteria to work within.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm still fascinated about actually having trying to predict what areas it will completely take over and what areas it won't, and it's still the point about it actually eating itself. You continue to make it, really, because if it's learned on your own information and then you're putting that information out, the whole thing about being human is that we can sort of zig and zag in a way that's very, very unpredictable, and it won't know to do that. Like, for example, let's take a technology like vinyl, and vinyl inherently is worse in terms of its sound reproduction, but we go back to it, or have gone back to it, for nostalgic reasons, for aesthetic reasons, for people haven't been listening to albums all the way through for a very long time, like we did in our day, because we're of a certain age. We're of a certain age where we remember buying an album, listening it to the whole way through. Whereas the kids today will listen to individual songs and they don't think in albums. But it's suddenly coming back. So what I'm saying is that the AI has to keep training on humans. Doesn't have enough history with which to know when those zigs and zags are going to happen, because those are the things that become interesting. And
I'll sort of accept that point and affirm it with a sort of slightly different angle. So we were talking to someone in the AI space that we know who is in Australia but built a calling engine or robot, or if you want to call it, an outbound robot, not one that just handles incoming calls and sounds like one of those press 3, press 4 type things. An outbound calling engine. He spent ages making sure it had a really good Australian accent using 11 Labs, and built this whole system together. And from 6,000 phone calls, he says, and I'll take him at his word, only one person noticed it was an AI. And this is outbound calling people, not you call someone and a secretary, something that sounds like a secretary or a really convincing secretary answers. This is outbound calling. Can we talk to you about your insurance type questions? And he did really well. But you could argue that at some point soon we'd get something like on our phone that would answer back, and you'd have these two AIs talking to each other. We'd say, look, tell that call to bugger off, or answer my standard question. You could probably end up with something on your phone that says, oh yeah, I do want to talk to them. Answer for me with my standard answers. Yes, I'm this old. Yes, I live in this area. Yes, I'm a man. Yes, I'm 6'2" or whatever. So I can see the point. I can see the time. Similarly, sort of agreeing with your point of AI eating itself. Well, I'll have an AI on my phone answering calls from an AI from a marketing company.
Right.
I can see that happening. I can see that happening very soon.
Yeah. And I remember speaking Tim's birthday party to a gentleman, was a couple of years ago now, and he was talking about AI music and how you can just generate whatever music you want with AI, which you absolutely can. But my argument was that that's not why people buy music. People buy into bands. They buy into singers. They want to go and see those singers live. And something I'm going to show you later kind of will play into that. But it's also in the film industry. When I go to film festivals, people, of course, they're all talking about AI, and they say, oh, AI is going to take over and everything's going to be just AI in this industry. And I was like, well, okay, but bunch of filmmakers there, all with differing opinions about what a good film is. Like, your opinion about what a good film is going to be different to mine. We might agree on films together, but that doesn't mean that we absolutely agree on every single film. And that's
you could argue every Jason Statham film looks like it's been made by the same AI, even though it wasn't made by an AI.
Well, yeah,
because it's
exactly.
very formulaic. And
but CGI has already largely done that, hasn't it? So every CGI film is now boring as shit to watch because they all look the same.
Exactly.
For some reason, all the cars go too fast now in films. I tried to watch Evening in Taipei or something it is, and Havoc with Tom Hardy. And the beginning scenes of those, the cars are driving in such unrealistic ways. You just think, I can't watch this anymore. It's annoyed me too much.
It's like watching a video game.
Yeah.
So the point is that if AI at this point is so good that it can answer any question, you should not go to the cinema and see a bad film. That would be my argument. If it is that good, every single film that you see from now on that's made by a studio should be absolutely excellent. And you
But on what criteria?
Well, exactly. You see, this is the problem. It's like, what is the criteria for what a great film is? And what I might think a great film is different to what you might think. So again, you end up with a human input of.
But if you go with, say, one of the greats, and it was Hitchcock, and you said the three ingredients are a great script, and a great script.
Exactly. But you see, that's again the if it can write a great script for you or great story, and it's all solved, and you don't need the human input anymore, then you've got it. You've got the blueprint. I mean, in reality, this doesn't kind of work like that, because
Who do you think you are, Shane? Do you think you're the guest or something?
Because what you get with I just want to make this point on film, because what you get with the old directors they were auteurs, and they could decide what was in that film. They could choose the actors, and they would either be brilliant or that if they weren't any good, they just get kicked out. But now so many films are made by committee and by lots of different people that you end up with this, okay, we've got this great script, but such and such reckons we should have a bit of this in because it makes it better.
Put a chick in it and make her gay.
Exactly, or something like that. A bit of diversity or whatever, ticking some boxes. And then it ends up not being what the original script was. So it kind of works both ways. But the point is that, again, if are we worried about AI in the creative industry? I suppose if you're an artist, even if you're an artist, is Banksy worried about AI? I don't think so.
So sort of one thing I would say is humans are very good at discovering things by accident. And I suppose it's very difficult to, they do program randomness into all sorts of systems, but I would argue that AI creativity is always looking backwards, even though obviously high processing.
It's not inventive, it's derivative.
Can look forward, but what I would argue that it is always going to be looking backwards. Make me a film like Hitchcock, okay, or write me a script like such and such. So humans, after a while, would probably all get bored of that, and someone who thinks of something a bit wacky and left field comes along and suddenly does well, and everybody will start copying them.
But that's the whole point. It's like if I say I can get an AI to make a song like Iron Maiden and go, oh, I've made a song like Iron Maiden. It's like, well, yeah. So if I want to listen to an Iron Maiden song, I'll listen to an Iron Maiden song.
There are
Do you know what I mean?
They are signing AI rappers and AI singers currently, but they've kind of built a whole Instagram image story behind them first. So it's not just some, name on a Spotify playlist. There's a whole sort of pretend persona behind them, and you might think, well, that's mad, but then there are people who have AI only fans making millions of pounds. So the edition is a bit weird. And I was talking to Glenn Goodman yesterday, who's a former guest in your podcast, and he was talking about Google Notebook LLM, where you can come up with a subject and it will make a podcast between two people of that subject.
That's crazy. So, I just got to step out for a minute. I'll be back in a second, but keep talking.
I'd come up with, I don't know, a financial advertising type podcast if the voices weren't really, really annoying, and they are really, really upbeat, peppy American female and male sort of tech bro type people. And he was talking about his friend who's decided to go really niche, and he's made AI in Google's Notebook LLM make a podcast about the kids show Rainbow with Zippy and Bungle, examining it from a cultural point of view. And it made this podcast, and you listen to it and it's quite funny, but the voices are too annoying for me.
So we've sort of discussed a variety of issues, but presumably, what's your assessment of let's say the state of the markets in relation to AI, that we're a bubble heading for a collapse, or is this the start of something really even more profound than that?
The FANGs
the March 2000 Nasdaq analogy is not a fair comparison.
I don't know. I mean, I think I heard yesterday that Nvidia is something like 4% of the MCI or something. MS.
It's like multiple countries by market capitalization. Yeah,
it's mad. So there is and if you read the article on Praetorian Capital by Cuppy. There's 2 articles there about AI, and they are very, very convincing that the whole AI build out is just going to ruin it in the same way Cisco and Sun computers in the 2000s went the same way, where people were building stuff for the sake of it, thinking
JDS Uniphase.
they build infrastructure and then they get customers, and it just wasn't true. And I think there's a certain element of that. Plus, the difference here, as he very cleverly points out, is the depreciation or the turnaround or the sort of the obsolescence cycle from an AI chip is something like 2 years. So you build this thing for millions of quid, and 2 years later you need to build this thing for millions of quid, or swap all the things out that cost the most money. But arguably, we all thought the .com, the .com bust, everybody thought that was the end of it all. Some people didn't they? And then look at Amazon now. But at the time,
the whole point is that not every company is going to be Amazon. Only one company gets to be Amazon.
2 or 3 big movers. I predict OpenAI will be one of them, because that's the first mover advantage. But I could be wrong. I mean, Yahoo was first, and Google killed Yahoo, so I don't know. I suspect 1 or 2 of the ones I use on a regular basis will still be there. I'm very happy to pay for them. They keep improving. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think the idea that you have to pay £10 a month for your AI subscription and you have to choose over Netflix and Amazon, or you do both because you work with them both, is not necessarily fantasy. I think people will pay for it because it does improve things so much more. And you imagine walking around without an iPhone now and just a brick phone, unless you're a nefarious drug dealer type. You would
just want to avoid
your iPhone away now. You'd feel
you want to avoid digital ID.
Well, yeah, that's another conversation. But you'd feel completely unproductive if they took your iPhone away, wouldn't you? So I think if you have GBT and they suddenly say no, it's £10 a month, or we take it away, I think you'd pay.
It reminds me of there's a book that you may know I came across in the late 90s called "The Singularity Is Now" by Ray Kurzweil, who's a sort of noted futurologist. And
he's got a
my
bit
wife's
wacky recently, though, isn't he? Yeah, I like Ray Kurzweil, but he's got a bit. His whole "I'm going to live forever. Let's take 500 pills a day" thing has gone a bit.
Well, exactly. But my wife disparagingly referred to it as "the future is spoink," which I thought was a rather nice approach. But one of the points he was making is that not just the rate of sort of technological progress has become exponential, but it's more than that. The rate at which it's gone exponential has itself become exponential, and that's what it feels like now. That things are moving so quickly that you need light speed just to catch up.
Every week, something that looks like complete magic comes along, even to people who had an iPhone for multiple years.
Yeah.
The new Sora thing that was released over the weekend. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but I've seen videos and it is mad.
So that's a video production tool, right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of just makes funny videos type thing. But there are some people who've sat down and made fantastic ads that look really good. It's taken them 100 hours prompting and throwing bits away and getting it to do another bit, and but it's a fantastic. I saw a really good Heineken ad. I think I'll send it to you. I can't remember. It looked like a really, really clever Heineken ad with 2 people running around doing things. And it was obviously the script was important, but it would have taken a massive team, loads of locations, catering, blah, blah, blah. And it was just one person using probably Google VO3 at the time. I don't know about the new Sora, but I haven't had a chance to play that yet. And you can only sort of relate to what's in front of you in some ways. And the thing that I find that people miss a lot is we're focusing on, oh my God, what jobs are going to go. But I would argue if you've got a firm of 8 people, you can be like a firm of 15 very quickly just by bringing AI systems in. We regularly walk into firms we don't do massive firms. We walk into smaller firms who need an AI audit. We sit down and say, what do you hate about your job? And we find out lots of stuff. We go, all right, we can remove hours from your day just by building this little thing here and connecting to that thing there, and then it connects to your email system or your CRM or whatever you're using to track your business, or even your QuickBooks or FreshBooks or Xero. We'll spend a couple of days in your business finding it out, and then we'll build systems that solve these problems. And all of a sudden, instead of letting go of employees, you've got potential without having to go the hiring cycle and all the problems of getting the wrong person and all the cost of recruitment. I know it's not great if you're looking for a job, but AI will replace you soon unless you learn how to use AI not to replace you.
Yeah, there's that knowledge gap at the moment where
You just need a little bit. You just need to be a little bit more knowledgeable than the person next to you, and you will win.
there's that knowledge gap at the moment where basically people who have a little understanding and a lot of understanding are selling to the people who have no clue and
Correct.
feel very scared about moving into it and don't realize actually this is very accessible. Like there's people I've said, just go to ChatGPT, copy and paste the contract that you're talking about and ask it to read it. Like this 4-page contract you're asking me to give you an opinion on,
Yeah.
I will read it, but it's so quick. Within seconds, it will read it and it will find things, and then you can read it and see what it's saying. You know,
It's augmentation, isn't it? You could say, you're a really good contracts lawyer. I want you to read this contract and point out to me the things that I'm exposed on or that could catch me out or those sorts. Exactly. That's what we do that all the time.
Yeah, it's a perfect use of it because it's but people are being, charging other people a lot of money to do that, and I guess what I'm thinking here is a few pods ago I was discussing the idea that I thought that there would be a lot of trickle down to smaller companies with AI. Like, of course, all the big companies are making money from the potential, and Nvidia's and all of that stuff. But there has to be. And what's interesting about what you're doing, Shane, is you're actually furthering that. You're pushing that forward. You're showing these companies what they can do with it and how much time it can save them. And of course, there is the human cost to it. But I think ultimately, so the jobs that it's taking are quite tedious, and you'd want somebody to take those jobs, and you'd want people to be able to be more creative and to use their time perhaps to do something else. And maybe maybe within a company that saved a lot of money with AI, they then might have the luxury to employ somebody just to think up ideas, and
as the boss, you spend more time working on the business and thinking about expanding the business and how what's your action plan for next year rather than dealing with the data. So can I give you sort of what is a fairly straightforward example? It isn't something that we do particularly, but it's something more relatable to most people. So imagine you're a fairly successful builder that does kitchens and loft conversions and that type of stuff, and you're in demand. A lot of the time you'll get phone calls and you will promise to phone people back and forget by the end of the day and go to the pub. It's a classic thing. Everybody complains builders don't phone them back and don't turn up and all that type of stuff. But you might be someone who doesn't want to miss those calls. It's not that hard. You could probably learn to do this yourself, but people have paid us for this type of stuff. You can build an AI system that answers the phone, has control of your Google Calendar or your Microsoft Calendar or online calendar of some sort, books the people in, can handle it when they phone up and say, can I change that appointment? Can handle answering their long questions about what type of work you do, makes it clear that it is an AI. So, look, I'm an AI, I'm taking this call, but we will call you back. But this way we've got you booked in our diary. And the person goes, oh, that's done now. It's in the diary. I don't have to worry. And it means Mr. Builder or Mrs. Builder is up the ladder, still doing their work or bossing their team around, not having to do that and run down to the car and find their diary and that type of stuff. And that, that would replace having an office and employee for someone who doesn't really need an office and employee, but could benefit by having someone to handle that part of the tedium and not miss. And suddenly they've got the ability to hire more teams and do more work because they've got one little thing that solves a problem.
I'm trying to find the potential downsides as much as the upsides. And I think they're important because if we look at the internet, for example, you might have said you will say you've got the world's knowledge at your fingertips. But has that made us as a human race more intelligent?
No, we're much stupider now.
We are, aren't we? I mean, it's quite phenomenal how this has worked. Has predictive text helped people to learn how to spell? Not really. It's made it worse. And but then again, you have all this information. It's such a paradox.
Is it that Morgan Freeman in the film Seven, where he walks into the library and
gentlemen, you're all surrounded by all this knowledge, and you're playing
the
poker.
security guards are playing cards instead of reading the books. Yeah, and that's what gets me. If you relate this to teenagers, it drives me insane because the thing that could give them everything takes it away at the same time.
Yeah.
So instead of learning about business, there's so many YouTube videos you could watch that teach you how to do what we do, teach you marketing, teach you how to set up any sort of business. There's so many, and you spend your time looking at silly TikTok videos and stuff like that. I mean, there is what got me the other day about sort of silly TikTok videos. There is a character called Jar Monkey, which is sort of a Rastafarian spider monkey. I think I haven't really watched it. I've seen the pictures. And he's got so many followers now. This is obviously AI fun. He's got so many followers now. He has product placement worth quite a lot of money. And this is just someone making TikTok videos using Google VO and a prompt that gives you the same character and a funny script.
Isn't there a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman on this topic?
Wow.
And I know there's one called The Shallows as well. As Paul says, quite rightly says, it's a paradox that we've got all this stuff and we're just pissing around.
Yeah, I mean, and there is last week or Friday, I think there was a report about an AI film star possibly being hired by an agency and other film stars kicking off about that. I didn't particularly find her engaging when I watched her show reel or something she had appeared in, this AI film star. I've seen much better stuff made by amateurs using a combination of tools. And it's about a script. I mean, for a little while I fell down the Stormtroopers on holiday type reels, and I thought they were kind of sort of Stormtrooper vlogs, and I think there's a few people making them. And I think the advantage of Stormtroopers is there's no face because they're always behind a mask, so it looks, you've got less chance of seeing the eyes and making you realize it's not real and stuff. Although but there's also Bigfoot sort of vlogs where Bigfoot wanders around doing stupid stuff and talking to people and getting on boats and falling off things, and they're very entertaining for a while because the novelty factors in, but after a while you think, oh, it's kind of boring now. But when the idea, I suppose my point is, it's about the script, and at the moment you can only do a certain length of time, a few seconds, 10 seconds, before you have to make a new one. You can't, and you have to string lots of little clips together, which is why they all look like these sort of jump around blogs that people do. But there are people making stupid amounts of money just by putting together silly characters on the internet using AI films, such as baby versions of famous politicians. Someone's making stupid money out of that. I could not believe the figures when I saw how much audiences had, and I don't know if he's making the money from the advertising on the channel or product placement or something else, or just typical sponsorships. This is sponsored by so and so.
I was going to ask you how they monetize it. I know you can
get sponsorship. I mean, have you heard of this product called Cluely?
No.
So this is, if I'm doing a Zoom interview for a job, let's say, this is an AI machine that, because you've got headphones on, you can get away with having headphones on a Zoom, can't you? Because everybody wears headphones on Zoom. That will answer the questions for you and make you sound much more knowledgeable than you are. So they say it reacts in quick enough time to say you need to. It's like Cyrano de Bergerac. It's in your ear telling you what to answer. And it's been around for a little while now, and it flew off the shelves when they announced it. It did really well, and it's improving all the time. And then 2 teenage founders are absolutely minted in about 6 months of doing this. And it literally sits in your headphones. It knows what's being said on the screen, and it answers for you. And you say, oh, that's a really hard question, and play for a little bit of time, and then you've got.
I'm glad you asked me that question.
Yeah.
Glad you asked me that question, and then you're able to give a really good answer because it has time to figure it out and tell you what to say.
But what I love about that is that's going to force people to have interviews in person and or without headphones and or with a camera that shows, not just their face, but the whole area that they're in.
But the quality of mask is now so good you can't even tell if you're meeting them face to face. It's actually the real person.
Yeah, there is that.
And it wouldn't have to be in your headphones. You could just write it on the screen and you could read it, and they wouldn't know that anyway. So
yeah, but that's why I'm saying you'd have a camera that's showing a different angle, not just the one.
I think we can agree all business meetings will now have to be conducted naked in a Faraday chamber.
Yeah, having had a cavity search on the way in.
Are you looking for any staff, Tim? So there's I noticed that there's obviously the Turing test that used to be the test of computer intelligence. Alan Turing designed it many years ago, and of course ChatGPT is way surpassed that now. And it was that if you could communicate with a machine and it showed that you couldn't tell that it was a machine, then that was passing the Turing test, and it was a high bar for a very long time. But of course now it's kind of meaningless because ChatGPT can very much. I mean, I thought I was being clever when I heard about that test, because I would say, describe Christmas to me, and what is a Christmassy feeling, or something like that. Some really, what I would say is a very difficult question, but ChatGPT now would easily be able to answer that. So Sam Altman actually this month has come out with a new Turing test 2.0, which I think is interesting, because the whole element of, is it intelligence or is it just regurgitating what it's found and patterns, which is actually what it does. It's not real intelligence. So the new standard is this, that suggests that AI would demonstrate human-level intelligence if it could not only formulate a complete theory of quantum gravity, but also explain the reasoning behind its discovery, including the questions it asked and the rationale for its approach. So I think that's a very high bar for it to do that. The only thing
most people wouldn't be capable of doing that.
Well, no, they can't. That's why. You see, that's why. But actually, within that lies the problem that we don't know whether it's right or not. That would be my first. So you have to give it an intractable problem to a human being, and then it would have to work it out and then explain how it worked it out, and then we'd have to be able to work out that it was actually right and come up with some new discovery that we could. Shit, my mic just fell over. A new discovery that we could actually prove is correct somehow. So it's a very interesting new test. I wonder what you think about that, Shane.
I saw some stuff about that on Twitter where people said they'd solved it, but it was so above my pay grade in terms of mathematics that I couldn't engage, to be honest. I would argue from your description that if we can't understand if it's answered right, how do we know it's worked? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the point with this particular new test is it hasn't got it. It hasn't worked it out. That's the point. It's the new high bar for it to achieve, and so that's been put forward. I can't think of, complex maths and some physical problem is what they're talking about.
Can it be tested in a laboratory? Can it be tested? Can it be falsified?
Or what would be a Turing test 2.0 that we could think of?
I think a Turing test 2.0 would be making a socialist politician seem like a human being.
Ah, man, that's too hard. I don't think it would ever do that.
Well done, that man. Medals all round. I mean, I was talking to a client in Liechtenstein last week, and we were talking about, would we trust even the best version that we have now to do our portfolio management, even though perhaps it's probably better than some fund managers. Lots of funds use systematic trend following, which is algorithmic driven, high frequency, that type of stuff. Would you be comfortable sitting there if it started rebalancing your portfolio when you were watching the news and you didn't agree with it? And I don't think I would. Then of course humans are prone to mistakes, and as our friend from Magellan said once, more money is being lost by people trying to avoid losing money than actually trying not to, so people preparing for a crash has lost some money, much more money. Sorry, Tim.
More money's been lost searching for yield than at the point of a gun.
Sorry, could you say that again?
More money's been lost searching for yield than at the point of a gun.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good one.
But that's a fascinating thing from Shane, because a lot of people will go simply on the basis of what's the performance been like, which tells you next to nothing about what the future's going to do.
Maybe I'm stupid, but if a fund manager used to be really, really good and I like the way he talks and he's had a bad year, I'm thinking maybe that's the time to give him some money.
For sure.
He's probably just made a bit of mistake, and
he's probably not got stupid all of a sudden.
He's picked some of the wrong stocks. His theses haven't gone the way he thought he would. I kind of think if he's at the top of his game and all the money floods to him, surely there's more chance of him not being as good next time around than being better. I don't know. I mean, that could be just as bad as choosing black because red has come up twice already. I don't know.
Yeah, that reminds me of the test that was in the Thinking Fast and Slow about praising. Was it praising pilots, and they were saying there was this test where they said if a pilot did something well and you praised them in this test,
they reverted to mean, I think, was the point.
Exactly. That was exactly the point. It's like they thought that actually praising them made them worse, but actually it was just a reversion to the mean. It was just a data thing that made it look like that. And I know that there are some people who look at, for example, trend followers and will invest in them when they're going through a bad period, because invariably they will go through a bad period, and then they'll go through a good period, which then they'll get out or they'll start to, so they're effectively trading in and out in exactly that way. I think the problem with certain fund managers, I guess, is, do you really know when that will change? Like, you could end up jumping around and ending up making your choices at the wrong time and just worsening your performance by trying to be clever. I mean, another example of that is within technical analysis, we look at moving averages, and what people tend to do is optimize. So they go back and optimize, and they find that if you were trading Apple, the best signals would come from, say, a 80-day and a 200-day moving average crossing over. I'm just making those numbers up, right? And so go back in history, that's made you the most money. And then you start trading it and you find actually the dynamics have changed and those aren't the best ones anymore. So it's pointless moving those parameters around because the market is always changing anyway. And so you may as well just stick with your strategy. Your strategy works better sometimes, it works worse sometimes, but at least you know that there's some consistency with what you're investing in.
One of the big problems with, maybe the biggest problem with trend followers, is that it's almost impossible to find a narrative that can placate clients. So if they have a period of, let's say, just long-term underperformance, the client will often say, well, what's the point of this? It's a waste of time. I'm going to go back to buying Nvidia or Mag 7 or whatever it is. But it's the lack of a narrative that's the problem. People love, I think this is part of the human condition. I think the reason trend followers work as well as they do is because they strip out all emotion from the process. And most, even professional managers, are unable to do that from what they do. So they then they migrate to whether it's momentum or value or growth or whatever their preferred strategy is. But it's the lack of a discernible, compelling narrative that's half of the problem. It's difficult to warrant to someone keeping the faith in a trend following approach because there's no obvious narrative in the way there is, say, with gold or tech or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
People can't bear the idea of uncertainty or unpredictability. They much prefer a narrative, even if it's a false narrative.
100%. I learned that from when I was in working for a bank in the 90s, and we would go and see clients across the country and talk about what we thought was coming next. And me being a technical analyst, who some people thought this is all voodoo anyway. You would say something like, "Oh, I think the oil price is going to collapse," or "I think sterling's going to collapse," or whatever it might be, and they'd say why, and I'd say, "Well, that's because that's the way the chart looks. It looks that's what's going to happen," and they go, "Right, okay," and then the economist would sit there and give like a spiel of for 20 minutes of why he thought the opposite, and of course they would listen to him, because they think, oh, that sounds like a really good story, but he'd be wrong.
People hear what they want to hear.
But he'd be wrong, and I'd be right. No, it wasn't so much that. It was just that because you can't explain, like I can look at a chart and say, palladium's going to explode higher, right? Why? I don't know. It's just that's what gold's going to break out. Why? I don't know, really. I could give you a reason, but truly, I don't know why.
There's something in Market Wizards that maybe sort of fall into that. One of the investors, I can't remember which one, who was featured in the Market Wizards book, he said he was on holiday. He was a TA type guy. He said he was on holiday and he couldn't believe it, but fuel oil looked like it was going to explode and he didn't know why. And he said, I've got to go. In those days, there was no internet connection. I've got to go back to New York and get in front of a trading screen and trade this thing, this fuel oil future or whatever it was, and he went back and he did it, and then the next day the first Gulf War started.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you don't know why, but the message is in the price, as people like you say. Forgive my ignorance, but a trend follower is just TA, but bigger or longer, or it's what it is. And they've got a rule, they stick with it, and they stick with it until it changes.
It's very simple. It's if a market is breaking upwards or downwards through a certain level to indicate strength, and then it's all capital management and managing
position sizing, risk management. Yeah.
But the other problem that trend following has is that the risk element of it makes it look more risky than it really is, because of the way value at risk is designed. So big outsized returns can actually harm it. And so when people are looking at investing in a certain fund, they look at the sort of return that you're going to get for the amount of risk that you're taking, and that punishes trend followers because of the way the industry values risk or calculates risk. It's a kind of, and it's difficult to get round as well, because I'm talking to a sort of future business partner about setting a fund up, and he comes from another fund where they value it in a certain way, and I'm like saying, but that's wrong. That's not how it really is. And he said, well, this is how the industry calculates it. So they're going to look at your risk profile and say X, Y, Z. And
the issue, sorry to cut in, Paul, the issue of client education then comes in. You say the way the industry looks at risk is wrong, quite straightforwardly.
Yeah.
It's wrong. And it's wrong because Harry Markowitz was wrong when he published his first piece about it, but he got adopted by the industry. And so the financial service industry is very good at doing stuff out of the rearview mirror.
Yes,
so
you wrote about that recently. I've done it a couple of weeks ago, didn't you?
Yeah. So this is the issue that, being something of a conspiracy theorist, I would say that the reason why so many funds are index trackers is because it simply allows the entire industry to grow to a level it wouldn't reach if people had more conviction.
Right.
Yeah. And going back to the AI element again. Unusually, I found a very interesting story in The Guardian of it's an opinion piece, but
you must feel dirty.
I know.
It's worse than that. I feel ashamed.
I'm sorry,
ashamed.
But you might actually like the content, because it's written. What's the name of the guy? Actually, I didn't even look at his name. I just sort of read it and thought, this is quite interesting.
Probably best that he stays anonymous.
Yeah, I don't know. Tim, would I be allowed to share the link? I'm not sure. But anyway, he talks about the enshittification of yeah, great word that he came out with in 2022, the enshittification of Amazon, and how, and this is really what I thought was interesting about that is, are we at a tipping point with Amazon? Has it grown to the point where now it's going to start tipping, and actually people are going to start to reject it in the same way that people started to reject online music and move towards vinyl and even cassette, if you can believe that? Obviously not in massive sort of numbers, but enough.
Well, how much money does Jeff Bezos need? Because I went for Amazon Prime so I didn't have to watch ads, and now I've got ads with Amazon Prime.
Yeah, and
someone who's rich enough to hire the whole of Venice for his wedding.
So the story is way past its prime. How did Amazon get so rubbish? Sick of scrolling through junk results, AI generated ads, and links to lookalike products, the author and the activist behind the term enshittification explains what's gone wrong with the internet and what we can do about it. So I thought that was really quite, and yeah, as I say, it was Guardian, but it was an interesting insight into how effectively Amazon now gatekeep the results to your searches. So if you're searching for something and you want to find a product, then retailers have to pay to get on that. In the same way that Google were charging companies for being in the search engine, they're doing exactly the same to other companies, which means that they have to then pay for that, which means that pushes the cost of that product up. So you're paying more to do that. And it's just moving away from what it was at the beginning, where it was a
Well,
company.
no tree grows to the sky, so Amazon will at some point be replaced by something else.
Well, yeah. Well,
In part, if not in whole.
Well, this is the thing. It's an interesting insight into what I think. Well, maybe a model, maybe just a model to what will happen to AI. You know, we'll get.
What I was going to say was that I can see a future where we're talking about the role of AI predominantly, I think, to be fair, over the course of this last hour, and so it's been in the case of sort of creative industries. But I could see a world in which some people will pay a premium for something that's guaranteed to be done by a human being.
100%. 100%.
It becomes artisanal.
I totally agree, and I think we're possibly closer to that now anyway. I mean, the whole AI art thing is like, well, yeah, okay, it goes back to the song thing where you can create songs and say, yeah, I've created this and it's an AI song, but people will push back against it. What I thought was actually quite frightening in some ways is that Spotify are now creating AI bands, and so you'll follow a band and it will be, oh, I really like this music, but it won't be a real artist. And so I think they've got to be careful that people will then start to reject that at some point. They might like it for a bit, but like eating eating margarine, it's not butter, you know, it's like people will go back to the real thing. But it will take some time. But that initial kind of surge is interesting in the same way that you were looking at the Stormtrooper videos, I guess.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then people will eventually go, you know what? Actually, I think I prefer the real thing. And as someone who still goes to concerts, I just don't think you can replace that experience. If you've got
music is ultimately data, whereas a band is a relationship.
So, my son,
that's very well
16,
put.
He likes K-pop. I don't know how that came about, but he likes K-pop. And the last concert he went to was at Wembley Stadium. Can't remember the name of the band, ITZY or KC or something like that. And some tickets were £850.
What?
And they had 4 dates, and they were selling tickets for some tickets for £850. I think the tickets we bought were 260, and they were medium level, not up the side, in the middle. And he said it was a decent show. And the tickets he bought before that to another show by another band in Wembley Arena were £180. Now, we all understand that in the old days, the concert tour used to push the album and people buy the album. Now, the album is about pushing the concert tour. But how much of a relationship does he have? Well, obviously, they're a girl band. He's got posters on his wall, that sort of stuff. But how much of a, in inverted commas, relationship does he have with that band when they are manufactured? All their music is manufactured. Most pop music that is popular, from Calvin Harris, whatever his name is, through to sort of, I don't know, Dua Lipa, is written with the same chord progression by guys who've analyzed, even without AI, who've analyzed all the most popular hits since 2001, let's say, when people stopped buying music and just started listening on the internet. They've all analyzed what were the most popular formulas for that, and they all are just churning out the same shit in the same way. And it sounds like it's AI already without AI getting involved, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And just going back briefly to this article, which I will share, if Tim, if you don't mind, is that all right?
Not at all.
Okay.
Every so often, The Guardian pulls out a belter. They did a great one a few years ago about Oxford PPE, the degree that rules Britain. It's fascinating.
So I just want to read this little part of it, which, in case you don't want to click on the link or whatever, it says, here's the natural history of enshittification. 1, first, the platforms are good to their users. 2, then they abuse their users to make things better for their business and business customers.
Which Amazon is clearly at, if it hasn't transcended already.
And then it's 3, then they abuse those customers to claw back all the value for themselves and become a great big pile of shit. Oh dear.
I mean, it could have been written by Warren Buffett.
I mean, it's true. When you go onto Amazon, you look for a thing, and you get loads of other things get presented to you that aren't the thing that you want, but are a bit like the thing you want. And then you have to realize that the sponsored drop down needs to be changed to the nearest or most accurate or whatever, cheapest or most expensive version of it, but it's always sponsored first. That's how all these sites charge their money, to be cost more money to be at the top. And that was That was obviously that's all stemmed from the way Google started, where it charged more money to be at the top and the ads were above that, So
And then you'll get this offering, and
I
it'll
think
be delivered.
eBay's gone that way
It'll
a
be
bit as
delivered
well.
to a bin outside, and then someone will nick it, and then you'll be handed until the end of time to review the thing you never got.
That's very true.
But all of that goes back to your core business, doesn't it, Shane? All those years ago, trying to get to the top of the rankings.
As we discussed before, people used to cheat at Yellow Pages to try and get to the front of the section. I kind of, arguably, if there's 40 pages of plumbers in the London directory, being the first one used to be a thing, or people used to be obsessed that it was a thing. I kind of thought, would you really work? Would you go to the index, look up P for plumber, and then find that page number in the book? Or would you just start flipping the book till you saw pictures of guys with spanners? I don't know. No one could prove that, but that's what they did. They'd all, as we discussed in our previous chat, they all added AAA 111 to their names to try and get to the front of the book, and some people's names stuck. And then, of course, Google came along, and the way to cheat that system or to game that system was to write your website in a certain way. Then they changed their algorithm, and the trick was to get more links from other people, and they changed their algorithm. The trick was to get more social links, and they changed their algorithm 2 or 3 times a year, and people who had lots and lots of business suddenly don't have very much business. So it's a classic case of planting your flag in a certain, or tying yourself to a mast is not a good thing, because the rules change. It's like, we used to call it digital sharecropping, where you were on the Lord's land, but he could suddenly change his mind about you being on the Lord's land. So having your own audience by having a podcast or a mailing list, or giving people something that makes you valuable to them through your own website, is always preferable. But of course, I don't know, websites like Etsy and eBay have millions and millions of users. So you kind of have to start there and then try and build your audience and take them away from that. But it's very difficult. And I think the same thing is applying. People are now writing content in a certain way because they know it appeals to large language models, as in AI. So if you're used to using ChatGPT all the time, there's a way of gaming your content that ChatGPT finds it faster than your competitors. Or so people say. For me, the jury is out on that, but certainly people are writing their content a certain way. So you may notice on larger blog posts these days, people will put a TLDR at the top because apparently everybody wants that.
Yeah.
So you'll see lots more articles with TLDR, 4 points. Then you'll see questions. If you were to ask this question, this would be the answer type stuff. So here's the article and the TLDR and 5 questions, so you don't have to read it. And the 5 questions part's kind of got Google ones. So if you start noticing articles that have a TLDR and lots of questions before you even start reading the article, that's to try and game both Google and AI at the same time.
We have the Library of Alexandria, and people aren't even willing to go through a tweet.
Yeah.
That's.
I've read the first layer. I'm tired now.
Yeah, the compression of information, because of course you are going to lose resolution by doing that, and whilst it might give you the flavour of it, it won't give you the detail, and the detail, as they say, the devil's in the detail.
There was a spitting image, I think maybe the first spitting image Christmas cash-in annual back in the mid-'80s, and I've always remembered they had a weightlifters film review section, and it had a review of Citizen Kane, and I think it was something like some dumb film about a crate or something, some dumb film about a skate.
Oh wow. Which spitting image is back? It's I don't know if you've seen.
Well, I know they've got into hot water with Paddington Bear.
Yeah. It's Prince Harry interviewing Pads. It's actually really funny, really good. Some bits of it are.
One, so I thought it was some old thing, but of course Keir Starmer's only the Prime Minister now. So yeah, I was quite shocked by that.
Yeah.
My favourite Keir Starmer impression is from Jeff Norcott. He's very good Keir Starmer.
Yeah, he's great. Absolutely brilliant.
Release the sausages.
Yeah. That's not bad. That's not bad at all, actually.
Just since we've wandered into the realm of politics and the lunacy that's going on, what I would say is, obviously, many of our clients are what you call people who've got money or high net worth individuals. I don't know any that aren't thinking about ways to leave the country. Even if they've got kids in school, they're thinking about it. Almost everybody I speak to is trying to leave the country or thinking about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All my clients. popular destination. Although Dubai is not a popular destination with the people I speak to.
Well, we had Graham Rowan on very, very recently, and he specialises in this kind of area, and he's plumped for Portugal.
Yeah, I mean, as he said, there was some visa you could get quite cheap, but they pop up every now and then. There was one for Malta that was really interesting. Bulgaria's, I don't know. I mean, if you've got a European passport, the world is a bit more of your oyster because there's quite a few places with lower taxes and good infrastructure that aren't, full of crime. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd go to Romania, what with the language, but there are places that have got pretty good tax regimes that are places we used to look down upon that are doing much better than we are.
Where would you go, Shane?
I would think about somewhere Eastern Europe because the infrastructure is good, the attitude is good. The Czech Republic isn't particularly good from a tax regime point of view, but certainly I think Bulgaria has a 10% flat corporation tax.
What about Latvia? I think they've got super fast internet.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked into that. Or Estonia. Estonia's kind of got this weird e-business visa where you can sort of have this electronic visa to be there if you're doing business. I'm not sure how residential it is. It's been around for a while. I haven't really looked into it, but I kind of want to live somewhere where there's more beach and less cold.
I suppose that's part and parcel of it. But what about culture, though? Won't these people like miss the culture here? And I know embracing new cultures could be interesting, but it's like being on holiday for a bit.
The cultural enrichment of mad people riding around on e-bikes, robbing your phone, and strange people.
I mean, once you've been stabbed a few times,
yeah.
once you've been stabbed a few times in Camden, you won't go back.
Yeah.
Fair point. So, what do you think? Was there anything that you wanted to say, Shane, that or any questions that we hadn't asked you that you wanted to talk about?
I think we've gone through a lot. I think the main point I want to get across is what most people are using AI for is only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yes, people are using it for fun and making money off silly videos and, as we said, stormtrooper silliness and, mad videos on Sora. And people are making good money from that. I don't know how long that will last. And most people are using, if you speak to the average person on the street who doesn't have a paid plan of any sort, they're kind of cutting and pasting stuff in, getting it to write Valentine's poems for their wives, that type of stuff, which is kind of getting a Ferrari and pushing it up and down the drive. They just don't understand how much you can use. But the real beauty of it is when you chain it together in systems. It's unbelievable if you put a thinking machine in the middle of some system that you do all the time, how much time it saves. Yeah, and it's not hard to do. I built something myself for fun on Sunday, and it took me about 3 hours of shouting at the machine, but it absolutely solved a problem that I'd come across. So if you're using the same prompt, we're using ChatGPT to do the same thing on a regular basis, you can build a system that actually solves that problem and makes it go away. And most people aren't doing that. It does my head in. It's really easy. It just takes a little bit of sitting down and figuring it out.
So you could ask ChatGPT to ask it what sort of prompts it should be using.
Yeah, I mean, if there was one tip to take away from this is you tell it it's really good at making prompts. So you say something like, you are a prompt engineering expert that has spent years dealing with large language models and AI. I want you to write a prompt that will solve this regular problem that I have, and you describe the problem. Then it'll write a prompt, and you can ask it to follow. I want you to write it in such a way that you get given this input and you provide this output for me, and then you can almost placeholder what the job is because you can change the subject and what you want from the subject each time. So you get it to write that prompt, and then you can cut and paste that into another instance of itself, and it gives you a much better answer than you say, can you answer this question for me in a vague way? That's the one thing you could do. You can get it to almost talk to itself. In fact, we do that. So we've got something where an AI will research something, and it then hands it off automatically to an AI that writes that thing, and then there's an AI that really, really edits it and gets rid of all the AI stuff that we talked about, like the double hyphens and so on, and it cuts it down to a much more readable, better article, and then an AI will post that to our job system or Slack, and another AI may or may not put that straight into LinkedIn before we proofread it, but often we'll proofread it normally.
And are you seeing an expansion of business, more and more people coming to you?
I think people are beginning to realize what AI can do, but most of the time, people come to us a lot because we're findable on Google, as we discussed, for things like financial marketing. People come to us for that. We do a lot of financial lead generation. We helped Ingoldsby Trust with their report this year, and that was to do with just the way it was written. It wasn't an AI job at all. But what we do is we will email people or DM them on LinkedIn and say, look, we could solve some problems for you using AI and it won't cost you very much. And we send a few of those, and occasionally we get a tickle and we'll go and see someone and we'll sort that out. But it's the thing that's happening now. We're only scratching the surface on what it can do. If you've got anybody that does anything repetitive that they hate in your office, you can make hours of work go away by just building a little system.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that there's two things that I think AI would be great at solving. One is spam calls. They're so annoying, and it's impossible it seems impossible to turn them off. And the problem is that somebody might share your phone number and say, oh yeah, give them a call, and therefore you might get a call from somebody that you just don't know, and it might be a business call that you want to take against a call which is a spam call. Don't know how you deal with that. And the same applies to email. Actually emailing people with the spam filters that still don't seem to work very well. And I don't get why email is still that bad, where things that are like, Tim will email me, sometimes it will go into junk, and I'm just like,
probably where it deserves to be.
I was like, how many times have I got to tell you, or how can you not see that I'm reading these?
Is it because Tim said I'm a Nigerian prince? And I just
That's right, yeah. But
I've got something that could make you £108,000.
Yeah, but you can. That's the whole
hours.
point. you can, though. That's the point. So why is it, like, for example, what I like about things like X or other platforms, not everybody can contact you. Like, you can switch that off and you can sort of gatekeep your conversations. But the people that do contact you, you really want them to contact you to a certain extent. This hasn't been solved, this whole business of the right people contacting you and the wrong people being kept out. So that would be a great problem to solve with AI.
Has it not been solved for a reason?
I don't know. Yeah, probably. Or, it's like one of those things that everybody doesn't see, and then suddenly somebody solves it and everyone goes, oh yeah, we should have done that.
I experienced this quite early in a previous corporate life, because everyone had their PC set to factory settings. So that meant that every time they got an email, there'd be a bing bong chime. Whereas I had my phone permanently set to auto divert, and basically I turned off the computer settings so it didn't make an annoying sound every time I got an email. Right. If people wanted to reach me, they had to make a bit of an effort, frankly, because most of the time it would be something that I didn't want to do. So, like work, for example. So, but this is the thing. I think Brilliant. So many people become slaves to the original format. They don't think about creative ways of tinkering with that in a way that will improve their efficiency.
Being the horrible marketer that I am, I do send a lot of emails for myself and for clients. And I would argue that we spend a lot of time making sure the email that we write doesn't get triggered or doesn't trigger spam filters. So you can't have the word free in there or offer. There's a lot of trigger words. And I suppose that it struggles with that. I mean, we sent 118,000 emails last month for a client, and they got 677 meetings from it. They're a fintech company. So it works if it's done well.
It's a tool. It depends who's using it.
So getting past the spam filters is sort of this job that marketers have when it comes to email marketing.
Yeah.
But you can you hear people talking about DMing people on Instagram all the time, don't they? Perhaps if you were someone who is an interior designer and you needed to find partners to work with, you could sit on your phone in your area and send random messages to builders and people like that. You could do that, but that'd be done by a human. But there's plenty of software out there that will do that all day for you and make it sound like a human, because AI makes it sound like a human. So we have software for ourselves and our clients that will send whatever the maximum limit is, 100 LinkedIn messages a day to their target market, done in a way that isn't very spammy, isn't very invasive, and gets their meetings on the constant. I had to turn ours off. We got too many meetings. I was too busy from it. We were getting 5 meetings a week from direct messaging, just not paying. We're no advertising, just a system we built using AI that direct messaged people on LinkedIn. And we targeted Dubai for a while for obvious reasons. And we just got too many meetings. We had to turn it off. And we have clients that use that type of thing now. So it's about, I suppose, circling back to your original statements about the script in some ways, is about how it's written.
Definitely.
If someone sends you a DM and says, "Hey, can I do business with you?" You generally tell them to fuck off, don't you? So it's about the script in a lot of ways, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I get emails from supposed people who are listening to the podcast that want to then, are an intermediate for somebody who wants to come on. So they say, "Oh, I'm from, Podcast Connect XYZ company,
Podcast agency, yeah."
Yeah, and it's like, "Hey, I was listening to your last pod with such and such, and I thought that was such great insight." And you're like, "This is AI. You're not listening."
See, that's what we call generic personalization. So personalization used to work because if I sent an email, "Hey, let's do business," that in the old days that would sort of work. Then people got bored of that. And I've said, "Hey, I read that really good blog post you wrote. Let's do business." That would kind of work because, we've read my blog post. Now there's really good systems that will read 6 or 7 of your blog posts, check out your LinkedIn, find your Facebook, and then put together a really good opening line that isn't, "Hey, read your blog post. That was really interesting." It will say something. Let's say
your blog post was crap.
Yeah, this is how you can improve it.
It'd be like,
Let's do business anyway.
I really liked your insight where you talked about how Russell Napier mentioned that thing. And that would prove to Tim that the person had read the blog, or that's the idea behind it. So I've actually taken time to figure out who I am before they emailed me. And people like that more than if you haven't done that. But the fact is, a lot of the time now, that is AI as well.
Well, what you'd expect to see is a bit of honesty. So you might say something like, "Look, I've just discovered your podcasts and I was listening to this particular episode and I found this part interesting." What they're trying to pretend is that they kind of, that they know more about you than they're letting on. So they don't reveal anything that's negative about themselves. And I think that's a real sign.
Describe the bit that they found interesting and actually describe the bit. They would have had to actually listen to it.
Yes,
whereas
they haven't.
You can scrape the results. I listened to that podcast you had with Shane McEvoy. I listened to that podcast you had with Tim Price. I listened to that podcast you had with Chris McIntosh. So it's sort of pseudo personalization because all they've done is they've had some AI or some system read the iTunes listings and it says, "This is Paul and his guest so and so," and they read that, and in this podcast it mentions this thing. Okay, and they could get lucky that you've actually given podcast platform that you use to upload, you have given it a decent description of what was talked about. That's a godsend to a podcast spammer because then they can pretend they have listened to it because you've mentioned things talked about. And you see that in, say, a Diary of a CEO. He always talks. There'll be quite a paragraph underneath. In this podcast, we've talked about this thing, and this thing. Now, obviously, he'd be the wrong person to spam because he's too big. But if you'd done that, and in this podcast we talked about how stormtroopers do this, someone can pick that up without actually listening to the podcast and spam you, and it would sound like they had. I mean, that's the whole point of this pseudo personalization that AI does.
Absolutely. And as you were saying, the script that they have to write to a real human being has got to be good, otherwise it's just too obvious. But so what do you think? Should we go to media picks?
We can.
Warum nicht?
Okay, what was that, Tim?
Why not in German?
I didn't hear. Sorry. Yeah, cool. Okay. Tim, do you want to go first?
I'll lead off. So I've got 2. One you may have used before, Paul, because you put me onto it. It's the Rubber Keyed Wanda.
Cool.
2024 documentary on the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Watched it at the weekend. For people of a certain age, i.e. mine, like traveling back 40 years in time.
Yeah.
It's a fantastically nostalgic thing about, for what probably for many people was their first home computer. And it's a nice deep dive into how it was made and the history of Clive Sinclair and whatnot. And as someone who's been involved in a satirical treatment of Top Gun using a C5, I felt very guilty and ashamed having sullied Sir Clive's reputation. But no, the Rubber Keyed Wanda is great fun. And I'm going to have a second one. So for anyone that's interested in that, that's a Spectrum. And the second one to circle back to what we were talking about in relation to film and film quality, there's a great Netflix series called The Leopard, and I finally saw the film original, which is 1963. Burt Lancaster, Alain Delon, Claudia Cardinali, who recently died, often viewed as the most beautiful woman ever to have lived. And The Leopard is probably the most beautiful film I've ever seen. So every shot is a masterpiece.
Oh, wow.
And it's set in Sicily. It's a very famous Italian book, Il Gattopardo, about Italy and specifically Sicily in the 1860s and the unification of Italy as a country. And it looks ravishing, whatever that means. And also, not just it's set in Sicily, but it has a score by Nino Rota, who I think then went on to do The Godfather. So this is perhaps a film that without The Leopard, you would never have had The Godfather.
Oh, wow. Really looking forward to watching that. Brilliant pick.
But visually, it's one of the most stunningly beautiful things I've ever seen.
Oh, fantastic.
So you can't but love the cinematography.
Oh, amazing. Shane.
The Netflix series is pretty good, but this is just superb.
Amazing.
I've got a couple of honourable mentions and a couple of more serious, I suppose. I'm reading Dominic's book, The Secret History of Gold, as well.
Fantastic. 2 thumbs up from me.
There's a couple of things in there Tim's mentioned that I hadn't got to yet, so I'm looking forward to that. I've been watching Slow Horses, but I'm kind of getting in and out of that because it seems to me that it's sort of swallowed the diversity pill a bit too much, because all of a sudden there are lady police officers that just aren't very credible, and everybody who's a bad guy is Nigel Farage or a right-wing Nazi, and it's just all these shows have gone far be it from them to pick real terrorists out and just they make everybody who's a white person the terrorist is. That's annoyed me. And I'm reading The Raven of Zurich, which is the memoirs of Felix Sommery, which is a bit, I suppose, like a more laid-back Viennese, German, Swiss version of Reminiscences of a Stock Operator.
Oh,
it's about someone who predicted sort of the Great Depression. It's set around the same time. It's someone who was a bit of a finance head or important finance person in Zurich at the time, but was born in Vienna. So it kind of starts off slow, to be fair, but he ends up working for the American government later and predicts all sorts of stuff to do with the war and the Cold War. And it's quite interesting. It's obviously written in very old-fashioned style language as well, but it's available on download all over the place. It's quite an interesting book.
Brilliant. Right. So, well, mine is going to be a... now, where's it gone? Mine is going to be an AI band or an AI creation, which I realize I can now play to you. I don't know if it'll trigger copyright stuff, but we don't monetize this podcast anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to play you something here. Have a listen to this. What's the song?
Sound of Silence.
Can you hear it?
No.
Oh no, it's not coming through. That's so annoying. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. I think it might be because of the noise removal. I'm going to go to original sound. Let's see if this works. Okay, because this came out on the last pod. So anyway, let me know if you can hear it.
Oh, that works. It's war.
Back in Black.
It's Back in Black. So this is AI Back in Black, which is like turned into a funk song, which is just
in the
amazing.
style of James Brown.
Back in black, I hit the sack.
But what's funny about this is somebody said,
Yeah.
so somebody actually said, if you play it at 1.25 speed, it becomes amazing. So check this out. What did you think of that?
I preferred the second version.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, it's just so, I love the comments. The comments
If you
are
can
just
do it at
so
a quarter
funny.
speed,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can hear my own echo.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's
Don't worry.
yeah. That's the problem with
If
me
you hear
taking.
it at quarter speed, you can probably get it to say "worship the devil."
Yes, that's
Or
right.
backwards.
Yeah. So let's. Do you want to do another one?
Why not?
Okay.
It's a music quiz. Entertainment.
Yes. Actually, I've got it at the wrong speed. It should be. And somebody's put, man, I thought this guy's voice is out of this world until I realised it actually was. He's an amazing voice when it comes in. I'll go back up to 125 speed.
Say your prayers, little one. Don't forget, my son, to include everyone. I tuck you in, one within, keep you free from sin, till the Sandman he comes. Sleep with one.
So there we go. It's
The faster speed version sounds a bit like "Are you being served?"
that's excellent.
You've all done very well.
You've all done very, very well. Right, I'll take the. I could do one last one, but I think it will. Do you want to do
Save
one
it for next time.
Save it for next time. Okay, cool. Let me take the echo off, and there we are. So
What platform was that?
that's off YouTube, and
So you don't know if it was made with Sonar or whatever. Sonar,
oh, I
whatever it
see.
is.
Yeah, I'm going to
This is
click on
you.
it. I'm going to click on it, and hopefully it won't come through. But it is. Let me see. I'm just looking at the comments. No, it doesn't say. It just says fake music. I don't know how. I don't know how it was created, but I just love the comments are just so funny, like some brilliant comments.
You can make a whole career out of a DJ that plays weird songs that have been James Browned up, couldn't you? You could just say, "Oh, people would be sitting in some bar somewhere listening to that one. Who's that? That's familiar. I don't recognise it," and it'd be annoying them until they catch it. You know.
Yeah.
I suspect there's whole channels doing stuff like this now. You know, that's the thing. Now, the barrier to creativity has been eroded in weird ways. People can sit there, and as Tim says and as Dominic says, let a million flowers bloom. If people want to watch this slop, and you're making money from it, good luck to you, I suppose.
But
Speaking of feedback, for some reason it's triggered a memory of a German fan loosely went up to David Hasselhoff rather, the guy behind Knight Rider, and said, "You are nothing without your robot car, nothing." Well, I thought that was quite funny, but clearly I'm in an audience of one once again.
I thought he was going to respond with something. That's why I waited. Yeah. The thing about this stuff is I'd listen to a little bit of it, but I don't think I'd listen to the whole song all the way through. I'd want to go back to the original. It's just
That was all novelty factor, wasn't it? Really?
Exactly, which kind of makes the point of what we've been saying on this pod. But Shane, it's been a long one, but it's been a great one. So thank you so much for coming on.
Title of your sex tape, Paul.
If you're able to share your handles, where people can find you.
The best place to look for us is flycastmedia.co.uk. That's flying, flycast, like fishing, flycastmedia.co.uk.
Was that because of the advert, that fly
Yes,
fishing
it was.
advert? Yeah. J.R. Hartley.
Yeah, Hartley. Have you got the book?
You do. That's wonderful. My name? Ah, yes. J.
My Twitter handle is SEO for
Hartley.
London. It's not my name. I should change it to my name, really. I will send you a couple of links for the show notes so people can try some toys we've made. And yeah, great.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks again, and look forward to having you back.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Have a good day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research or contact a professional advisor.